Oh, we're live.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Out of Nowhere. Well, my guest today is Mike Clearland. Mike's book, in 2015, The Messenger, was met with high praise. It explores the mysterious connection between owls, synchronicity, and UFO abductions. It was his first-hand experience with these elusive events that have been foundation for his research. His book is also personal memoir and a journey of self-discovery. Can we please welcome Mike to the show? Hello there.
Hello, thank you.
How are you? When you talk about owls, how did it all start for you then?
Oh, this is so. In order to tell this, I have to tell a story that happened 19 years ago, and I was living in the West near Yellowstone National Park, and there's another national park called Grand Teton National Park, and there was a young woman in that town, and I met her, and I at the time I was teaching camping. I was doing professional guiding work in Alaska and all up and down throughout the Rockies. And so I took this woman camping for one night. Her name is Kristen, and we went out just for one night. It was a beautiful night. We didn't take a tent. We just slept out under the stars. It was totally magical. And as the sun was setting, because to tell this story correctly, I have to. There's little details.
Mm,
As the sun was setting, she was talking about something, and I was like, "What? What is? What do you?" What? I was really impressed. She seemed smarter and more spiritual and more insightful than I would have guessed. And as she's talking, these owls started flying above us. Three owls. They flew around us, they flew near us, they landed near us, they landed on branches near us, and it lasted for about 2 hours as the sun was setting. And we actually um, made a little meal on a camp stove, and then we walked a little farther to find a good spot to sleep, and the owls followed us. So they were swooping around following us, and and when the sun went down and the stars came out, this is the northern Rockies, so we're at a high elevation,
right.
and beautiful, amazing uh, uh, stars. So you lay down on your back, and these owls would fly right over our faces and blot out the stars for just a blink of an eye. It was so powerful. And so the next morning we were like, wow, that was really cool. And I said, hey, let's go camping again. So 4 days later, we went camping to a different spot, and the exact same thing happened. Now, as far as at sunset, three owls flew around us. We were in a different part of the mountains, but I'm convinced it was the same three owls. It's funny, I just talked with Kristen over the weekend, and we had a long talk about this. Um, and that was 19 years ago, so almost 20 years ago. And what I did not mention at the time, but now I talk about it, was that I was looking at these owls. So these are little 10-inch tall owls. They're what's
Yeah,
called short-eared owls.
I know.
They were one was standing at our feet, and I remember I had this voice in my head that said, "This has something to do with the UFOs." And so afterwards, I started looking into the owl thing. So to have it happen once was pretty cool, but to have it happen twice
Nice.
with the same person was so mystical. And so I started researching owls, like the spiritual meaning of owls, owls in mythology, owls in folklore, and at the same time, because of that voice in my head, I started looking into the UFO thing. Now I had in my youth missing time, close-up UFO sightings, and when I was 30, which was over half my life ago, I had an experience of seeing five gray beings out my window and, and out my bedroom window. Like I sat
Mm,
up in bed and saw these beings, and basically I had a voice in my head that said, um, oh, yes, they're here. Now is the time to put your head on the pillow and shut down. So I just went right back to sleep, which is absolutely like it was. I should have been frightened. I felt nothing at all. So that I had denied these events in my youth, and then it was after seeing the owls that I started to look into them. Oh, here, let me add one more thing. I reached out to Kristen. This is going back into 2000, around 2009. So it was years later. I wrote up a blog post. I started a blog, and I wrote the story of seeing the owls in the mountains with her. And I said, "What were you talking about the very first night when we saw the very first owls? I remember I was really struck by what you were talking about." She said, "Oh, I remember exactly what I was talking about." She said, "I was giving my most heartfelt definition of what God means to me." So that's like this really like and now I'm not at all churchy. Like I don't go to church and I don't practice any religion, but I do recognize the sort of mythic power of what she said. So I started in my blog. I just put a little thing there that said, "Hey, I want to hear your owl stories." It didn't take long before people started sending me their owl stories, and that was 2009 was 16 years ago. So for the last 16 years, I have been getting a steady flood of people sending me their owl stories, most often owl and UFOs co-joined. So I have thousands of reports on file, and they just continue to this day. I just got one this morning.
It's
So
funny saying that because where me and Paul go to Bempton, it's a bird sanctuary up there, and we see owls quite often, me and Paul. And then people come up who are interested in birds and say, "Have you seen them owls?" I say, "We see them all the time, me and Paul do."
yeah, well, so if you're in a bird sanctuary and you're out at night, it's not a magical occurrence to see an owl, but when they're co-joined somehow with a powerful either emotional or spiritual event or a UFO event, that's when I take note. You know,
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I want to ask you a question. Are owls? Why is that? That's just gone down there. Comments. Let's put it back on again. That's better. That's better. Just in case anybody asks you a question. Are owls actually animals in these experiences, or could they be scream memoirs masking alien entities?
that is a perfect question, and the answer is it could be. So sometimes they're real owls. Like when I was with Kristen, those were little. They were this big. They were tiny.
Yeah,
They were 10 inches tall. They were cute. They were flying around. Those were real owls. Oftentimes, people report. Here's a story. This is what's a very commonly reported is someone will drive down a lonely road at night. They'll turn a corner and there'll be a big owl in the road. They'll describe that owl as being 4 foot tall, so almost over a meter tall, and that is pretty much impossible for any owl. They just simply don't get that big.
no,
But that's what they describe, and it's very consistent. And then they'll have this kind of like, oh, then it either flew away or I was suddenly driving again. And then when I got home, I was missing 2 hours of time. I should have been home at midnight and it was 2 in the morning. So they have these kinds of stories, and those are very consistent. My files are full of essentially that story over and over again. And I've talked to the people who do hypnotherapy for UFO contact experiences,
yeah,
and this is very common. And they'll say to the people, describe the owl. And under hypnosis, they'll say, oh, the owl is skinny and it has a bald head and it's got big black eyes and it's got a tight fitting spacesuit on. And I don't think that's an owl. So sometimes they it seems to be that now I'm speculating here, but this is backed up by a lot of anecdotal documentation, that the gray aliens, most probably the gray beings, are putting like a psychic projection into the mind of the observer. And
right.
instead of seeing a gray being, which would be terrifying in the middle of the road alone at night, they see a big owl, which is unusual, but not impossible in a way. So that's very consistent in my files. And I have a lot of variations on the screen memory issue. But now I should be clear, it's not just owls. People report deer too. So at the top of the list, most commonly reported are deer and
Mm,
owls. And then below that are all kinds of other things: squirrels, raccoons, and firemen, and clowns, and there's all kinds of things that show up as a screen memory. Cats, and so, uh, but but deer and owl are consistently at the top. And now for me, in the type of research I'm doing, deer and owl both have a rich mythic lore. There's lots of folklore. There's lots of mythology about both deer and owls. So to me, that's a sort of clue in a way that this is an ancient phenomena, or it's a modern phenomena that's using these ancient archetypal animals as part of their masking, let's say.
Yeah, yeah. Do owls encounters cluster around specific times, locations, or states of consciousness, dreams, or altered states?
Ooh, I mean, so I guess I could come up with examples of that. So here's what I'm finding. So it's been 16 years of me getting these files. And
Yeah,
initially, all I was asking was owls and UFOs. That's all I wanted to hear about. But other stories started trickling in, and I've been very open to those other stories. So there are 5 things that get reported in connection with owls in my files. There might be more things out there, but this is the pattern that's showing up in my files. So it would be, one is owls and UFOs. Got a lot of stories. I'm asking for those stories, so it's not a surprise that they show up in when people reach out to me. The other would be owls and meditation. So that would be like an altered state of consciousness, or let's say
yeah.
mystical. I got a lot of stories about people sitting down to meditate, and then they'll close their eyes and they'll go through the meditation process. And when they open their eyes, they'll be facing a window and an owl will be staring in at them.
Oh,
Very common. And then the other one would be psychedelics, people taking psychedelics, most often mushrooms, will see owls. And sometimes those are real owls, like 2 people see a real owl under the influence of, they both take mushrooms. Or it might be like a visionary experience where they have a psychedelic, like a giant 15-foot tall glowing owl will talk to them and give them some sort of uh, sage advice, let's say. But I'm not. I totally I treat those as a real owl experience, even though it's kind of a hallucination, let's say. So let's say, and then the third would be shamanic initiation.
oh,
Someone becoming a shaman, going through the initiation process, beca- will see owls. It's very well understood in the community of shamans, and that's consistent all around the world, as far as I can tell. Now, and then the final one is owls and death. The people see owls after a loved one dies, most often a parent, and then in my files I have a consistent thread of people seeing owls, and then their grieving process is eliminated when they confront this owl and literally talk to the owl, and as if it is their dead parent. So these 5 things would be UFOs, meditation, psychedelics, shamanic initiation, and death. So if you kind of take a step back, all of those points have a kind of metaphysical or mystical quality. So I would have to answer yes. There is a sort of mystical or or oh, I don't want to say spiritual. That's maybe not the right word, but there is a non-ordinary state of reality connected to all of those things in to a lesser or greater degree. I mean, certainly meditation and psychedelics
hmm.
are you're not in an ordinary state of consciousness, as well as death. So I see the owl as sort of a totem to to that deeper reality.
Good answer. Um, are owls a doorway to something larger, perhaps an hidden intelligence or unseen dimension?
Oh, oh, are they the gatekeeper? Sure. Oh, you have to kind of take a step back and not be a pragmatic, rational researcher. You got to kind of tap into the poetry of these things to answer that kind of question. But I would say yes, in a symbolic form, the owls would represent that doorway. Now the owl is an animal, very unique. It can see in the darkness. Not only can it see in the darkness, it can fly in the forest in complete darkness, through the trees, in the forest, in the dark. Now, ancient man must have recognized that and seen it as magical. Right now, we're modern man now. We can say, oh no, they just have highly adapted eyes, and their evolutionary process has created an ability where they can see with a very low amount of light in the forest.
Mm.
But to ancient man, they would have been absolute magical. So there came a rich worldwide set of mythologies and folklores around the owl, and that would be their ability to see in the night would transfer to a mythos of them traveling to other realms, traveling to the land of the dead, to the land of the ancestors, to the land of the gods. And then consistent in the folklore is the owl would then come back with a message. So oftentimes in some folklores it's very dark. I mean, right? So the owls fly into the night, so they have a dark mythos. Like the Native Americans in the Southwest have a very negative association with owls, while other places have it's less so. Uh, but but they are not. So yes, your question was, are they gatekeepers? And you could make a pretty good argument that while an owl is just a regular bird, the symbolic and mythic nature of the folklore would certainly represent them as either a gatekeeper, or they have the ability to step in and out of that other realm with ease.
Do you think these experiences point to an expanded understanding of consciousness?
So I got to be so I would love to say yes to that, but I feel like it's because I don't really know what like how to describe what an expanded understanding of consciousness would really be, right? So I mean, maybe a mystic sitting on a mountaintop in the lotus position in India could speak to that, but I don't feel like I'm in a position to speak to that. But what I can say is that the people who have the owl and UFO experiences, like I have a little checklist of questions I ask, and then I wait for people to tell me things. And one of the things people tell me is like, oh, I had this experience with an owl, and then I had a spiritual awakening. So it's very common that people will tell these stories. Someone sees like a UFO flies over them, it's at nighttime, and then an owl lands on a branch within a minute of each other. So to me, that's co-joined, and they are struck by the owl. They say like, oh my word, that owl had such a presence. It radiated this kind of ominous energy. So they really feel the power of the owl. And then, so like it's an owl and UFO experience. And then they'll say, oh yeah, then I had a spiritual awakening. And I've really like, that's a bold thing to say. And I had to like, here's this funny story. I do presentations every once in a while, and I have a slideshow, and you have the PowerPoint presentation, and you got the
Yeah.
slides on your laptop, and then there was one it just said spiritual awakening in big letters, and I was going to talk about exactly this. It's not 100%. So if you see an owl, you don't have a spiritual awakening. It's not 1-to-1, but it's enough of a pattern that I trust it, and I was going to delete that from the slideshow. I said, I can't back that up. I don't feel like I can really back that up. Like it's more like an anecdotal impression that I have rather than a true knowing. And I was about to delete this. You just push a little button, you delete the slide. And a guy comes up and he says, "Hey, Mike, I'm looking forward to your talk. Hey, just so you know, I had an owl and UFO experience. And you know what happened? I had a spiritual awakening
Yeah.
right after that happened." And I was like, "Oh gosh, now it's in my slideshow, and I'm not questioning it anymore." So
It's strange how things happen like that, isn't it? When you're thinking about something, delete something, and then somebody says something about it.
yeah. Oh, it happens to me all the time. And I think so. Here's something I can definitely say. For me, the owl seems connected to synchronicities. I don't know how, I don't know what the connection is, but it seems to be connected with synchronicities.
Yeah. How often do people reporting UFOs or abduction experiences also describe synchronicities involving owls?
Well, in my files, it's all the time, but I'm asking for those. So in the I would love to get a number of that. Why would that be hard to research, right? So there are people out there doing abduction research that have files. Those people, for obvious reasons, they don't share those files. Those are their own private files because people's identities and things like that. So I would say it's not 100%. That maybe people who have a contact experience. So let's say someone is having ongoing UFO contact experience, and it's been happening for their lifetime. I would say that nearly 100% of those people will have an odd owl story to tell. Might only be one story or two stories, but I would say nearly 100% of the people who have ongoing UFO contact experiences will have an occasional owl experience. Some people have owl experiences all the time. Some people have them very fleeting. So what I can say, it's enough to be a very real pattern, and enough to make my like email inbox overflow with exactly those kinds of stories.
Very interesting, I love things like this about. Um, what role does timing play in owl related synchronicities, e.g., owls appearing right before or after abduction like events?
Well, from my oh wow, the timing is all over the map. It's like sometimes it's simultaneously. So I had the woman reached out to me. I'm not going to use her name, and I'll tell the story
No.
briefly. She went. She felt inspired to do a skywatch. She wanted to go to a mountaintop, so she went with a friend. And that there was this is in an area where it's not like big. This would be in the south, and so they drove up a hill, and they were like, the person had lived in this town all his life, and he said there's no place to look, there's no outlooks here on the top on this road. And they turn a corner and there's like a big outlook, there's like a park place where they can park the car, and they have this big beautiful view, and neither of them knew about this. So they get there and they get out of the car, and then there's this little dot way off in the distance, and she goes, what's that? And it comes closer and closer and closer, and it eventually uh, is right above them, like this big orb. And it wasn't like a structured craft. It wasn't like a metal flying saucer. It was a
No.
sphere of illuminated, like an illuminated ball of light. And if I remember the story correctly, she said it was orange, and he said it was blue when they retold the story.
Oh, yeah.
And so that hovers right over him, and then it like I gotta be there was it felt like she said it felt like there was like communication, like she was receiving a download.
Right.
And then it disappeared, and then there was hooting owls in the forest right as soon as it disappeared. So that to me is one to one, simultaneous. They're happening at the same time. And so she can't separate the owls from this powerful. I mean, it's not impossible to hear an owl in a forest, but to have it happen in such close connection with that powerful sighting is very telling. So yeah, so there it's all over the map. And in my book, I struggled with that because I would love to find a consistent pattern. And the only thing I can say is more often than not, the owls show up before the UFO event, but that's not 100%.
Yeah, yeah, I know what you mean there. Um, can synchronicity be psychological or trigger to notice deeper paranormal phenomena?
Ooh, so synchronicity, like psychologists will study synchronicity, and they have to, like, you're sort of stepping out of the bounds of pragmatic materialistic science to study synchronicity, because it seems like it's a coincidental event or a magical event. Now, a synchronicity by definition is, for me, there's lots of definitions to it. Other people might have something else. There's a mere coincidence which happen occasionally for everyone.
Yeah.
But when the coincidence has a profound, deeper meaning, like it has like a deeper impact to the observer, that's when it becomes a synchronicity. And so to study, so when in doing this research, right? So I'm the subtitle of my first book is Owls, Synchronicity, and the UFO Abductee. So I'm looking at UFO abduction, or
Yeah.
UFOs, let's say, owls, and then synchronicity. Like so a synchronicity is something we can all tap into. We all know what that means. And a UFO event is something quite unusual. It's rare. But I try to weight all these things the same, like the power of the synchronicity and the power of a UFO abduction. And what I find is that if I treat them equally, like I feel that they all have the same power. It feels like to me they're all they all have the power to transform. People who have a powerful synchronicity have stories of that changing their lives. People choose to, like, let's say, propose to their wife because of a powerful experience, a powerful synchronistic experience. So people really, I have a lot of stories where people treat these very seriously, change their career, change everything, transform, become more spiritual because of a single synchronistic event. So it does have a profound power, even though on the surface it would be easy to dismiss it as nothing more than a coincidence.
Right. Very interesting. I'll move on a little bit now. Why might abductees recall owls instead of extraterrestrial beings during hypnotic regression or spontaneous memory?
Well, that would imply the screen memory, that the gray beings, most often the gray beings. I suspect there's other accounts out there, but anecdotally, that's what I sense it is that it's the gray beings that can put a projected image into the mind of the observer. I have a very close friend, and do you remember, you know who Bud Hopkins was, right?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
She worked with Bud years ago. She has had a lot of experiences, had a lifetime of experiences. So she would have been 19 years old. She's an adult now. This was many years ago. When she was 19 years old, she was working at an outdoor school for girls. And it was a wilderness school where she would take the girls camping. And so this was in the forest, and there were two campsites. And because of where the tents needed to be and the number of kids and stuff like that, there were one site was over here and one site was over there, and there was a trail. You had to walk a few minutes between the two campsites. So she was at one campsite, full daylight, and she was going to walk to the other campsite. So she was going to walk down the trail through the forest.
Yeah.
And she already knew that she had been having contact experiences, but they always happened at night. So here it was full daylight, and she walks down this trail. And this is in the Pacific Northwest with the big trees and the beautiful forest, and she could hear the girls behind her. She could hear the girls laughing in the forest at one of the campsites. And so she turns the corner, and there on the trail, standing next to the trail, is a gray alien, like a gray being with the bald head and the big black eyes, standing full daylight right next to the trail, right in front of her. And it looks at her, and she looks at it, and she hears this kind of, because all the communication is telepathic between these beings. I've never heard a story where the gray being moves its mouth and speaks. So she hears this telepathic thing, like, oops, owl, 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 and she's looking at this thing, and it's reverberating this owl message, and she watches it morph from a gray being into an owl, and then it turns around and walks into the forest. And she's like, so I have that story a couple different ways, but that one is the most dramatic. So here's someone who seemingly caught a being, like surprised it, and it turned into an owl, and then turned around and walked into the forest. Now here's a funny little detail. She later went back and said, okay, so it walked in the forest through the tall grass, and it looked like it kind of smoothly ran quickly into the forest. But when she traced the path that it would have taken, there was a deep dip, like it would have had to gone downhill and gone up, like walk over it, like down a trench and then up the other side of a trench. But it didn't. It like walked totally smoothly without going down the dip and
Right.
coming back up. So there are these strange details that just
Did it seem
fill
to
these stories.
did it seem to float then?
Well, she said it seemed like it ran, or it moved quickly into the forest. But her assumption then was that it floated. Yeah, and she didn't come to that conclusion until she realized, how did it get over this dip in the, like, if you had run through there, you would have had to run downhill and then run back up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Um, is there a connection between nocturnal animals like owls and the liminal dreamlike qualities of abduction reports?
Wow. So deer are not really nocturnal animals, but they do have big black eyes and they do walk around at night. So, I mean, there are reports. I've certainly heard reports of cats and raccoons showing up as screen memories. And so certainly in the folklore, right? So a nocturnal animal in the folklore, a raccoon, a cat, would have a different folklore than a daytime animal, like like a wolf or a bear. So I factor in these folklore and these mythic qualities into my research. Like, I don't want to separate the ancient folklore from the modern report, because it feels like they're intertwined. Um, a woman told me she's had a lot of odd UFO type experiences. So she's at her house, and there's a glass door, like a big glass door to her backyard, and she walks past the glass door, and she looks outside, and there are a bunch of raccoons. She said there's 5 raccoons looking in, and then suddenly she's paralyzed. She's totally paralyzed, and she thinks she's having a stroke. And then she's paralyzed. And when this paralyzed state releases, she gets on the phone and she calls 911. She calls the ambulance, and the ambulance comes, and she's totally fine. But she says, I was paralyzed. I was unable to move. And the first responders have no, like, they got mad at her, essentially. Like, there's nothing wrong with you. Why did you call us? Now I hear that story, and I feel like the 5 raccoons in her backyard were quite probably a screen memory for 5 beings. So I can't prove that, but wow, that's certainly how it plays out.
Sounds like it as well, doesn't it? Another question here. Oh yeah. How do cultural myths about owls shape the way we understand these events?
Well, I think they shape it in an archetypal way, right? Let's say the owl has a rich tradition folklore, and then the term archetype would imply that all of us have an internal knowing of what an owl is, right? So like, you go see Star Wars, and you see Luke Skywalker, and he's like, having lightsaber fights and adventures and stuff. You're watching a movie, but below the waterline, you're seeing the story of the hero, the archetypal story of the hero. So we all resonate strongly with that movie, because we all have like this deep internal knowing of what the hero might be. Or same, we have the deep knowing of what a mother is. So there's these archetypal things. And I would argue that the owl is an archetype. Here's what happens. People say, they have a totally boring story, like, oh, I saw an owl on the fence in my backyard. And then they follow it up. They say, it was a total blessing to see that owl. And they said it resonated such an aura of majesty, right? I mean, that's like, it's just a bird.
Yeah.
But this is what comes out. Obviously, owls can be beautiful birds, and they look great, but people say that all the time. They're like, oh my word, you don't see that. You don't say that when you see a robin, but you do say that when you see an owl. I mean, eagles are very majestic, and they also have an archetypal power. But
Yeah.
so that archetypal power is something that all of us deep inside understand. And then you have a real life experience with an owl, and it is overshadowed, or it colors the overall experience with that majesty or that power that everyone talks about when they say they see an owl. And so I'm cautiously arguing that the aliens, right? I feel that they are choosing the owl because of that archetypal power, right? They could choose any animal,
Hmm.
but they're choosing the owl because it comes with that mystical resonance that the owl holds. And the ancient myths are different all throughout different cultures. The ancient Greeks saw the owl as well, the goddess of Athena, the goddess of wisdom, had a companion owl. So now it's 2,000 years later, or almost 3,000 years later, and we still have owls. Like when someone, like in America here, when like little kids graduate from elementary school, the teacher thumbtacks little owls onto the bulletin board
Oh,
for graduation day. I mean, it's still here. It's still with us.
right. Yeah, strange anyway. Yeah, when you're saying about animals like that, I think 2017, when we used to go up to Bempton quite often, nearly every night, this hare, massive big hare, used to come right close up to me and Paul quite often. I used to say to Paul, that hare's getting closer to us. Usually they'll run away. And it kept getting closer and closer. And then it's, I don't know, 6 feet away. It just stand up like that and look at us. I'm thinking, that's a bit strange, Paul. He said, no. And then all of a sudden, he'll just turn round, hop along off, and then run up the hillside. And he used to do it often to me and Paul. I used to think, how strange is that? Why is it
Wow.
doing that?
Wow, how interesting. So the owls in my would be connected to folkloric. It's connected to the dead, and that's ancient folklore. In modern folklore, it's connected to the UFO. But the rabbit or the hare,
Yeah,
that would
yeah.
be more an association to the fairy realm. That would be the totem of the fairies in a way.
And then it happened to a few times. And then Andrew Collins came with us.
Hmm.
Andrew, I don't know if you know Andrew
Oh,
Collins.
yeah, I've met him years ago.
He's lovely, is Andrew. Came up to Benton and he had a woman from America wanted to interview him at Benton. And we stood there and this bloody hair came up not far away from Andrew. And Andrew said, what the hell is that? I said, here it comes again. It's coming to show its face in front of four of us now.
Hmm.
And then turned round and went off again. Ran off.
How big would it stand if when it was? You said it stood upright.
Oh, yeah, it was quite big. 3 foot.
Oh wow, oh, that's pretty big. So I mean, I live in a place with a lot of rabbits, and
And,
they're like tiny. They're like
yeah, and,
there's
and
nothing unusual.
Andrew called it something else.
You called it
Um,
what?
Andrew says some, I can't remember what he said it was now. His special name for it,
Oh,
and
okay.
from ancient times. And he went, oh my God, I wish I got that on camera. None of us got it on camera. Strange enough, innit? By the time
Yeah,
we got it out, it gone. And then
yeah.
you know something, we never saw it again. It disappeared. How
Wow.
strange! It just seemed to go away. And every time we went over there, because we thought, I wonder if it's got something wrong with it. That's why it keeps coming to us. I don't know. And we never ever saw it again. And I missed it. Strange enough.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then when we first saw it, it was playing with a blackbird. This
Wow.
blackbird was on a post, and this came here, and this blackbird jumped down, and that was jumping with it, like playing with each other.
Wow.
And I said, "That's unusual, Paul." He said, "How strange is that?" And then as we got closer to him, the blackbird flew off and that ran off.
Wow.
That's when we first saw it.
Here, this is a story that this is like. Sometimes the stories are so subtle. So I was in England in 2014, and there was a crop circle conference,
Oh,
and
yeah.
and that would have been in Marlborough.
Warminster.
It would have been in Marlborough.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so I just got a little bed and breakfast. I got a room, and then I didn't want to drive on the wrong side of the road, so I got a bicycle. So I was riding. It was really a magical trip. So, but and then I got back late one night to the bed and breakfast, and the kitchen was still open, and the inn was still open, but I was the only person there in the kitchen, and the waitress was there, and she said, "Are you one of those crappies?" And I was like, "Well, no, like sort of." It was before the season would have begun, so it was
Oh,
early in
yeah.
the spring,
Yeah.
and I was like, Kind of," you know." So I'm at the conference. There's a conference downtown at the college, and so she asked me a few questions, and like, "What are you doing?" It's like, "Oh, I'm doing owl research." And she said, "You know what happened last night? She lives in right nearby in nearby Marlborough there, and she said I was driving home, and then our driveway curves, and there's four posts, and as I pulled in, there was an owl on each post. One, two, three, four. And so we lit it up in the
That's
headlights one at a
unusual.
time. And then I kind of went, oh, because at this point, like I feel like these synchronistic things kind of follow me, and I kind of went, oh, that was me. I think I said something like, oh, that was my fault. And she looked at me like, what? Like you manifested owls for me? And I'm like, "Mm." So we sat and we talked, and I had a pint of Guinness, and we talked, and it was after hours and stuff like that. So I told her owl story after owl story after owl story, and by the end of it, she kind of went, you know what? You might have manifested those owls for me. I thought it was such a kind of like I didn't. It was a really subtle moment, but it really like people around me have owl experiences
I was going to
all
say,
the time.
it's not a, or did it manifest for you?
Well, for her, did it manifest for
Yeah.
her? Like, did my presence? Because that would have been I would have arrived at the inn the day before. So the night she saw the owls was the night I arrived at the inn, and then the next night is when she told me the story, and that was like I can't prove it. But if it was in a movie, everyone in the movie theater would kind of nod and say, "Oh, there was some magical event took place."
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
I will go. Well, we're all right for time. What similarities exist between owl appearances in UFO accounts and in folklore mythology worldwide?
Ooh. So I would argue that the UFOs now, like I'm at a point now where I don't quite, I'm not locked into aliens from another planet coming here on a metal spaceship visiting Earth. I think it's much more subtle and much more elusive what's going on. The weirdness of the stories and the people who have, I mean, just the fact that people who see UFOs will often have these powerful owl experiences or often have irrational synchronicities after their experience. Here's another thing that's very common for when people have experiences with close-up UFO contact. They become psychic. Their psychic skills increase. This is well understood. Even MUFON, which is a very conservative research organization, um, on their little checklist, right? They say, what time of day did you see your UFO? What was it traveling east to west? These real normal questions. And then lower down on the list, it's like, have your ESP skills changed or improved? And then they say, has your religion changed? Essentially, they're saying, have you had a spiritual change? So
Yeah.
this is well understood with people who do this kind of research. So your question was, how does the ancient lore of the owl play out in the modern context of the UFO report? And that is a very slippery question. And all I can say is you have to kind of tap into the mood of the story to really answer that one. And because it doesn't. Hang on, let me just think if I'm trying to think of a good example of one. I've got so many owls. I have a lot of stories with owls and UFOs, but some of them take a long time to tell. So to tell one quickly.
No,
Oh,
it's all right. Got plenty of time.
um, well, earlier I talked about the fellow who had the owl and UFO experience, and then had the spiritual awakening. Right. So the owl would be. I would suspect strongly that in ancient times, this would be a hard one to prove, but but the mood and the assumption is that the owl would have been the totem of these kinds of spiritual events, right? So they're often connected with death. They're often connected with shamanic practices. The shaman, the totem animal of the shaman, is often the owl. So so I would here's something. Okay, here. So when in my files, do you know what Reiki is? Reiki therapy, like a
Yeah, I do. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So within my files, the people who have owl experiences co-joined with UFO experiences, they become Reiki therapists in such high numbers that it is way beyond statistical probability. I would argue that half the people who have a UFO and owl experience then become Reiki therapists. I would argue that Reiki therapy is similar to a shamanic practice, right? You're doing energetic
I know
energy
it's coming to
work
mind.
with a client and a patient. That's not dissimilar than the shaman helping the villager come to terms with some spiritual needs. So I kind of lost. I'm lost in the maze right now trying to answer your question, but I would say that the spiritual component of the mythology of the owl and the underlying spiritual component or mystical component or extrasensory or component of the UFO experience would like if there's a mystical component to the owl and there's a mystical component to the UFO contact experience. I I could probably come up with dozens of stories. I wish I could come up with one right now that answered your question. I know that I got anyway. Keep on.
What's Mike? What's one of the unusual cases you've come across when you're talking about owls?
So a guy contacts me and he says I've got an owl story for you. This takes a little bit to tell. It's
It's
a
all right,
beautiful
no
story.
problem.
So he was in Montana and he was working for the forest. So in the like a high school or a college summer job is you go out in the forest and you count trees for the Forest Service. It's just like you just you walk a grid and you count how many trees and what kind of trees. So this one person was out there and he had a book and the book is called, I think it's called The Seven Arrows or The Seven Feathers. I think, and it's written by a Native American. It's about how to find your totem animal. So he's got this book in his backpack and he's counting the trees and he takes a break and he's reading the book and he's getting, hey, this is the part where it tells you how to find your totem animal. He's kind of lying on the ground reading the book and he's like, I'm going to take a nap. So he takes the book and he sets it on his chest, open on the page that says how to find your spirit animal.
Oh yeah.
And he's laying there and he falls asleep and he wakes up and there's this thing touching his face and there's this hot, stinky breath right in his face. And he like sits really still, and then he hears this boom, 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 and this thing walks away. This big, heavy thing walks away. And he sits up, and there's a grizzly bear walking away into the woods.
Oh my
So
God.
he's got his book, How to Find Your Spirit Animal, on his chest, and a grizzly bear touches his nose and breathes on his face. So he gives that book to this person that I befriended, this person who told me the story. And so he gives him the book, and it's the exact same book. And this person is he's at his house, and he's reading the book, and he gets to the part where it's like, oh, here's the part where it says how. This is when it's going to tell me how to find your spirit animal. And then
All
boom,
right.
boom, boom. There's a knock on the door, and so he takes the book and he folds. You dog ear the page and you fold the page, right? So he folds the page and he answers the door, and this guy says, "Hey, I got to take all my stuff out of your garage." And so someone had left some stuff in his garage, and he was ready to take it back, and it was the middle of the night, or it was the evening anyway. And
Right.
so they say, "So here, I'll drive you to the storage unit. Let's get everything out. Let's just do this right now." So they move the stuff into the van, and they drive. This is in a lonely part of Montana. So they're driving to another town, and as they're driving, on the dashboard in front of the driver is the book, dog-eared, How to Find Your Spirit Animal. So he's driving down the road, and he he looks off in the distance, and in the headlights there's this thing coming towards the car, bobbing towards the car in flight. And then he's like, "Oh my gosh, I don't want to hit this thing. I've got to slow down. It looks like it's going to run right into the car." And it turns out it's a big owl. This is summertime, driving with the
Yeah.
window down. And so this owl flies alongside the car. So it's flying right alongside the car. So he's driving, and the owl flies alongside the car, and the owl's wing gently touches the side of his head.
Oh my
The
God.
driver's gently touches the side of his head. And he said he could look in the rearview mirror on the driver's side and see the owl looking, like they locked eyes. He could lock eyes through the mirror. He's driving straight, but the owl, it's touching the side of his head. Then the owl flies off. He's got the book, How to Find Your Totem Animal, on the dashboard.
God.
Okay, so then he says, I was having an issue in my, I was losing sight in one eye, and I went to the doctor. I was still young. This had happened years and years before,
Right.
and they thought it was cancer. There was a mass growing in my brain.
Oh God.
So they removed it, and then they realized they thought it was cancer, but it wasn't cancer. It was a subsumed twin sister. They didn't know it was a subsumed twin. Like I had been born, or I had been conceived as a twin, and then my body like subsumed the other body, and it was so there was like a little teeny embryo in his. It was his, and he felt it was his sister,
Oh my God.
and they removed it. And he said, "I felt like all my life I've been in contact with this sister of mine, like she's my spirit guide." And then he said, "See this scar right here?
Hmm.
That's right where the owl touched my temple."
Oh my God.
So he had UFO experiences. He had to, I want to be very careful here because this is someone else's story, but he was called in to give testimony at a trial. And he was like, "Do I do this?" Like there was all kinds of issues. There was all kinds of complicated issues. And
Yeah.
he said, "Do I do this? I need an answer." And he was asking this at his house, and he said, "I need an answer. Do I give testimony at this trial?" And he looks out the front door, and across the street, above the house, is a giant hovering flying saucer. Right when he asks, "Should I give testimony in this trial?" So he did give the testimony, but but this is these are the subtle, strange aspects to these stories that, like, how do you pull one thread without unraveling the whole sweater?
Hmm.
So so there's a UFO component in the story. He's had UFO experiences, and he's also had this mystical experience with finding his spirit animal, and the fact that his what he feels is his lifelong spirit guide. He says, I'm psychic, but it's not me. It's my sister, my twin sister, that's psychic, and she's simply communicating with me.
Hmm.
That's how he explains his psychic abilities. And that's where she was removed, and that's where the owl touched his forehead.
How amazing story that is.
That's as good as it gets. Wow. Yeah, that takes a while to tell, but that's the power of the stories that I'm collecting.
It sounds absolutely brilliant, that. I'll do another question here. Why do owls so frequently appear in UFO abduction accounts?
Good God, I've been at this for 16 years. I would love to give an answer to that question. I can't. I would love to. It's a genuine mystery to me here. So like I should be able to. So I got four things. I should be able to do this off the top of my head. So one is that owls are alarm clocks. I would say they're saying pay attention, right? So an owl, like an alarm clock, is to wake you up, right? So it's like the owl is there. Like if the UFO experience didn't wake you up, the owl is there to like poke you and needle you and say, wake up, pay attention. On the simplest level, that I can say it. Now that's kind of an elusive answer. What does that really mean? But that's what I feel. And then the owls are here to announce initiation. That that's another kind of open-ended thing. So I would say the owl is and then the owl is I think the owl is the totem of the transformational process. So if someone has a powerful UFO experience, if they're a thoughtful, aware person, they should have a transformation. They should, if you see a close-up UFO, if you're abducted by a UFO, if you have a close-up sighting, you should be able to like say, "Ooh, reality is not what I have been taught. Something deeper is going on." And then the owl appears as if a totem or a punctuation mark. It's there to like reinforce that bigger picture. If that so I would love to have a good answer on why owls, but that's as good as I can get. Is that just that they're here to as a marker, as a call to wake up.
So interesting tonight, talking about UFOs and owls and abduction, you know, um, the amazing stories what you must get every day.
Pretty much every, not quite every day. Sometimes I get a day off or two, but there was a while there. You know what I think it is that sometimes I think there's like a YouTube video will get extra hits or something, and then I'll just be flooded with stories. I went through a period where I was getting 6 stories a day, and it went on for almost a year. It was too much. It was too much. I was just flooded.
Do you think sometimes people are chosen to to be involved with stories like this?
Wow, that gets very mystical, right? So on a deeper level, yeah. So I could say yes, people are chosen. But on a deeper level, like, do we have a higher self? Do we have an oversoul? Like, I have to speculate. The owl thing is so elusive. I've got to go down these kind of dark alleys
Yeah.
to speculate. Um, do we have an oversoul? Do we have a higher consciousness? Do we have a better self that is eternal? Did we choose to take on this role, to tell these owl stories, to have these experiences, to be like, I think there's like, I fully recognize like that I'm the crazy uncle at the family reunion when because of the work I do. And and like if I was president of the bank, which I'm not, I would not be talking about this stuff.
Does
But
it
I'm
run in your family then?
No, not that I can tell. Oh no, I've asked my brother and my sister, and my parents are gone, but I've asked my cousins. Nobody's got any other stories.
What
So
about your grandparents? Were they
I would love to know. I would love. They never had any. They never. My grandparents, the Clellans side of the family were from Scotland, so I would have loved to have asked them about, like, uh, but no. And then my mother's side of the family were all from Denmark. So, but I have no. I can't answer that. So they're all gone. I
right, right,
was I
right.
was I was well into my 40s before I started this research.
And you're doing a great job as well doing it. I can guarantee that. Um, where can people get in touch with you and where can people get your book?
The easiest way to get in touch with me is to go to mikecleland.com. It's Mike Cleland, all one word. And if you can't remember how to spell it, you can Google owls, UFOs, and I'm the first thing that comes up. And I'm about the next 25 things below that. So, but from that site, mikecleland.com, you can go to my Amazon page with the books. You can go to my podcast. You can go to there's a bunch of different things you can go. So that's kind of the hub of my work. I've started a Substack recently. I'm not doing much with that, but I'm trying to like I don't want these stories to just sit in a file cabinet. I,
No.
I want them to be out there. I want them to be alive. So, and then yes, if anyone out there has had experience with an owl, I don't care if it has a UFO in it. I'm just a mystical, powerful experience with an owl. You reach out to me. I'll do my best to get back to you. I read every story. I cannot get back to everyone. I would love to have a secretary or a staff of
It's hard
secretaries.
going, isn't it?
Pardon?
It's hard going sometimes,
Oh,
reaching out to a lot of people. I know Paul. Paul will be up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and he answers every email he gets. And
oh,
he
I wish
said,
I
I'm
could.
shattered. The time I've gone through everybody, spoke to nearly everybody as well. He says, I feel as though I'm letting him down if I don't get back to him.
It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. It's the hardest part of the job is which is a job. I mean, it's like it's the hardest part of the work I'm doing is it's like walking uphill in sand. Like every step you take uphill, you feel like you sink back down three more steps, and the email list just gets longer. And if someone emails you on a Monday and you don't get back on Tuesday, and then on Tuesday you get two more emails, and then the one on Monday is like it's so much work.
Crazy.
But it's rewarding. It's incredibly rewarding, and I appreciate every single letter that I get.
Yes, I totally agree with you there. I get lots of emails as well, and I try and answer everybody. Sometimes it's quite hard going because, like you said, they mount up day after there's more.
Yeah, yeah.
And you've got a like friend request. I like to go through everybody to see if they're interesting people.
Oh,
Some
and
people,
that's what you find is that everyone is there's profoundly interesting stories, rich stories. No one has just like, oh, I saw an owl and it was this magical event. You talk to them and there's like so much going on in their lives with their dreams and their premonitions and their psychic experiences and oftentimes that they don't have UFO experiences, and I'm not tied into that anymore. For a while I was, and I've loosened my grip up, and I'm open to so much more now.
are you hoping to write another book?
I'm working on a book. Wrote a fiction book recently where I tried to explore these ideas in fiction, and then you know what I'm writing? I'm going to start a book. Owls and death is there's I have so many stories about owls and death,
And death.
and they're often very heartwarming, in the sense that people get closure on the passing of a parent, or there's really heartwarming, beautiful stories. So that feels like it's my next project.
Oh, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. It sounds so interesting. But thank you for coming on the show. It's been very interesting. I've enjoyed it immensely.
Oh, this has been a delight. Thanks. I loved it. Thanks.
And, look for the future, maybe in the new year, get you back on again.
Anytime.
But yeah, thank you to everybody in the chat room. And of course, everybody who'll listen to the show in the next hour, or because it's live on YouTube. So anybody can go on YouTube and just look for Bob Brown Out of Nowhere. Thank you again. Good night and God bless.
Thank you.
Bye for now.